Episodes of the Green Corn Rebellion Show are sponsored by Oklahoma Progress Now. Oklahoma Progress Now is a 501c4 organization focused on building progressive power in Oklahoma. Their primary efforts are on developing progressive content for a 21st century audience, coalition, and capacity building across progressive organizations and causes, and working to see elected leaders who are more responsive to their constituents and the needs of the many. Areas of focus include progressive messaging and communications, coalition building and resource sharing, and focused progressive policy goals. You can check out their Twitch live streams, and they go live on Facebook on at noon, Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Please support this organization. It's a really great organization. It's just getting started here in Oklahoma. Thank you. Now enjoy the rest of the video. Oh, this is the Green Corn Rebellion Show. I'm Gregory Hurd II. Today I'm here with State Senator Mary Boren, who represents the 16th District in the Oklahoma State Senate. How are you doing today?
I'm hanging in there.
Good.
I'm doing better than I thought I would be doing after the impeachment hearings, but
Yeah. All right.
hanging in there. I think I have a pathway of moving forward that I feel pretty good about.
I'm sure those Republican senators do too. Otherwise, they wouldn't have voted the way that they did. So,
That's a good point.
yeah. Yeah.
But you know what? But the majority didn't. Like the
Yeah.
majority, there's more people who do not want this to keep going on than there are that want it. Now, it's too close of a margin. We would like it to be more like this instead of like that.
More 80-20 than
Yeah,
whatever it is currently. Yeah.
Right. But
Yeah.
if it's 55-45, we're still on the right side. So
Yeah.
I think that's what kind of gives me hope is that I'm on there's 55% of the people are involved in this whole thing that want to protect the Constitution and want to protect our constitutional way of life. And we even have some pretty wealthy business owners that want us to have a constitutional form of government, and they don't want to finance a authoritarian insurrection. They don't. They
Yeah.
want. They don't want that.
Yeah. I was. It's insane. Oh wow. But yeah, the first thing I wanted to talk about was what were your thoughts on Governor Kevin Stitt's State of the State speech from last week or 2 weeks ago?
Okay, who's watching this? You're recording it.
I am recording. No one's watching currently because I'm just recording it. But yes.
Okay, so you asked me my thoughts. You didn't ask my feeling. So my thoughts were confused, um, frustrated, bored, kind of bored.
I thought it sounded like good fiction.
Yeah, but you know what? But this, have you ever watched Scooby Doo?
I have, yes. The
Okay,
original, of course.
the
Yes.
original, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so I remember coming home as a kid, elementary school, and watched Scooby Doo. I might have been in late middle school watching Scooby Doo, and I liked it.
Mhm.
But I'm like, this episode is the same as like the last, 40 episodes. Like the plot was the same.
Yeah.
It was just a different dude behind a mask. And so that's what I say about Bored is that it's pretty predictable. And, you know, there's not a whole lot of surprise. There's not a whole lot of innovation. It's pretty much what the state chamber and Oklahoma Council for Public Affairs wants. They give him the playbook. He reads out the playbook. He was more insulting than others that the OCPA has chosen to be our governor. it was more insulting, unless he's more bought into that us versus them,
Yeah.
and he's more bought into the, stopping the California liberals from ruining our state. And he brought in, the current administration, the federal government, who, by the way, is going to be writing out a big fat check to Oklahoma,
Hmm.
but yet he was still punking on them. So it's just, I guess I was surprised about how ungracious he was towards different groups, especially the federal government that's going to be bailing out Oklahoma. And so those are my thoughts. What were your thoughts?
I actually didn't listen to the whole thing, but I've heard about it secondhand from like several other people,
What did you
and
hear? What
it's
did people say? What kind of filtered down to you?
the stuff he said about wanting to thing I thought was probably the most offensive was the thing he said about wanting to continue the peaceful harmony we've had with the tribes since like the beginning of the state or something like that. And I was like, whoa, first of all, it's like you yourself have not been kind to the tribes, and Oklahoma history hasn't been kind to the tribes either. So I don't know where that came from. Um, and the stuff that he was saying about how his handling of coronavirus and making it sound like it's all over and making it sound like he did well because supposedly businesses were able to survive, like I don't know, like
Unemployment rate is really low.
yeah, and and I guess those are hypothetically technically good things, but there's also been like like almost 4,000 people here have died from coronavirus. It's still an ongoing thing. I think during this time we're having like almost 4,000 or 5,000 new cases here in Oklahoma every other day whenever he gave the speech. So it seemed like super unaware, or at least like
Out of touch.
out of
Mhm.
touch with like what is actually going on in reference to the virus. But yeah, and it was just kind of a lot of the speech itself was kind of, from what I heard about it, seems pretty delusional, and there was just like not a lot that was that should have been said or kept from that speech. It's just insane, but that's
A lot.
basically what I've heard from it.
Did you pick up on the part where he kind of attacked the Tulsa public schools?
Yeah, I heard about that
They
too. I thought that was
didn't like
pretty
that.
wild.
People
Yeah,
didn't like
like
that.
that's oh wow.
What's funny for his it would be interesting to pull up how he did in Tulsa County when he ran for election,
Hmm.
especially in the primary, and kind of how he navigated the primary and how he ended up in the runoff. And but
Yeah.
I'm thinking he pulled a lot from Tulsa, that Tulsa area, because that's where he was from.
Yeah.
So in his reelection, it's funny because the one of the reasons why he's punking on or picking on Tulsa is because that's kind of where he's from, and all his buddies are griping to him about Tulsa,
Hmm.
and but it's really making a lot of Tulsans really upset with him. So
Yeah.
it's like, I don't know. I think that could really compromise his reelection map. Did you hear him on KGOU the other day? He
I
did an
didn't. What did
interview.
he say?
Well, Sean Ashley asked him, "Hey, are you going to run again?" And he goes, "Well, I really have enjoyed. It's such an honor to be governor, and I'll be letting y'all know what and I think you do this for a time, but you don't make it your whole career." I'm like, it really didn't sound like he was he's like, he's leaving some lanes open. And I don't know if he's going to run for Senate or
I don't
sounds
know.
like
I
to me
think,
he's kind of working something out with somebody
yeah,
somewhere.
because I think he'll probably end up running again, but I also think he wants to run for like president or something. Like I don't. I think he has other future plans or higher plans other than just running for governor. Because
Well,
that
and it's
speech, because his speech from what I heard, it sounded more like a campaign speech, not a I'm governor speech. You know?
yeah, that makes sense that if he was taking on the federal government that he's trying to, well, then maybe our pizza bet should be that Inhofe backs down
Mm-hmm.
and Stitt steps into that spot, and then I just don't see that. I guess he could take over the Senate seat and then run for president within 18 months. But that seems like that would be kind of hard to
Yeah.
do. Maybe in 6 years, when the next one is, but I don't know. I don't see him waiting around. He seems kind of impulsive and doesn't want to wait his turn. So I don't know. Whatever.
Yeah. But so what what all has been going on or is going on at the Capitol since session began?
Well, we've had 2 weeks of the people who want to make abortion illegal have come up to the Capitol for 2 weeks.
It's been
And
for the whole 2 weeks. I just saw them that one day. I
two,
just heard about them
yeah,
that one
they were
day.
there two separate times.
Oh,
Like
okay. I see
week
what you
one,
mean.
they were there for a day
Oh, okay.
and they were running through the halls without mask. And I was trying to go to the bathroom and go get coffee. And these people were like right in the middle of our area. And Senator Young has encouraged us to not take, they call themselves the abolitionists, but he's like, don't use that word has a whole different meaning and they're appropriating a word that is
Yeah.
not appropriate for them. So we all get to make up our own name for them. And so a gaggle of them were in my area, in my hall area, and there's signs that say wear a mask. And they're standing in my area. And I say, you need to have a mask on.
Hmm.
And they said, do you know where this one young lady said, do you know where Senator Newhouse is? And I said, no, I don't know where Senator Newhouse is. Plus it's on the doors if
Yeah.
read. And so then we walk like 5 feet towards the door, leaving out of the Senate offices into the main hall. And there's a sergeant of arms there that's saying, hey, you need to put on a mask. And she looks to him, she goes, do you know where Senator Newhouse's office is? And I'm like, this is her like way out of having a conversation about a mask.
Hmm.
And so then I said, well, do you even have a mask? Do you have one on you? She goes, no, I don't wear them. I said, well, get a mask on and then we can help you with Senator Newhouse, figuring out where Senator Newhouse is. And then I was trying to walk towards the bathroom as they were walking down the hall towards the stairs. And I said, I can't see my dad if I'm around people. Like my dad is an older man and I can't take him to the doctor if people are running around the Capitol
Yeah.
without masks. And so that kind of like, you just feel like you are getting hijacked everywhere you go. You think you're kind of get this little lane, like you're trying to create like this little bubble that you can operate under. You go to your office and you try to go out to the bathroom and so then the next week I go to the Capitol and they're there again. And there's a whole circle, like 50 people in a big circle on the fourth floor, 3 inches apart, no masks.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "Excuse me, y'all are supposed to be wearing masks." And they said, "Well, they said that we only had to wear them when we were in the Senate area, but as long as we social distance, that we don't have to wear them." Well, I'm like, "You're not socially distanced." I'm like, "Well, who told you that?" And like, I'm thinking, "Who told you that?"
Mm-hmm.
And so I go get a mask and I bring them back and I'm trying to be nice, like, "Here's your masks." And then I go back to the metal detector area and talked to the metal detector people, and they said, "Yeah, we really can't enforce anything. There's nothing to enforce." I said, "So you're gonna just let these people come in with no mask on? That's how you've basically been trained?" And see, we were told as senators this whole different
Mm-hmm.
plan. So there's this huge communication disconnect between what the senators were told about our area. And there was this big miscommunication between, does the governor's order apply to the Capitol building? And we learned that no, it's the Senate and the House that cover the Capitol building. So it's our Senate pro tem and Speaker of the House, their rules are the thing that applies. And there's no signage, there's no rules.
Hmm.
And then all the committees, like you go to a Senate committee meeting and 85% of the senators don't, like, they're like just doing their thing, and the staff have to wear masks and they're not socially distancing and they're running around getting in each other's face. And
Hmm.
so that's been kind of the main thing, on top of passing 5 anti-abortion bills, abortion regulation bills, and shooting down the making it a crime, um, outlawing all of it. That got shot down. And so the people came back the next week. I don't know why, but they did. And they had an outdoor thing that they had set up with the stage and all this. And it was like, I don't know, probably 8 below 0. And it wasn't really a particularly pretty day for that. But
Hmm.
uh, that has dominated a lot. And then there's just still been very heavy OCPA and kind of ALEC bills that are just kind of flying through like they normally do. Lots of gun bills, lots of um
What are the gun bills that are going through now? I mean,
oh,
they
there's so
pretty
many.
much have everything
I
nowadays,
know.
don't
They can,
they?
yeah, they can always find something else. And they do. Like one real big one is college campuses. They have
Yeah, that's one place where they don't have, where they can't really have guns. But is
they've
that
oh
is that a
they've
bill currently?
yeah, well they've have reached an agreement that each state school campus
Mm-hmm.
is able to make their own rules for their population. So if you're in Southeast Oklahoma and you've got, a lot of hunters and people in more of a rural, remote area, then that's going to have a certain kind of rule. But if you're
Yeah.
in a metropolitan area, then you might have different rules. So they're going to kind of tackle that. We do have a bill on the floor it's a resolution to have the NRA come to Oklahoma instead of Texas, because they're filing bankruptcy I
Mm-hmm.
think they're in Tennessee or Virginia. I can't remember.
Yeah.
They're filing bankruptcy because the operators stole a bunch of money,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a lot of lawsuits. So they're filing bankruptcy so they can kind of cut their losses and start over. And they're I think they were in New York because it was the DA, the
Yeah.
Attorney General in New York, started hammering them on their nonprofit status and stealing money and embezzling money and not using money the way that they're supposed to do. And so they're wanting to move to Texas, is where they're supposed to move to, Dallas. And we have a resolution to, I guess, ask them to come to Oklahoma. I don't know. But
Okay.
I think it would be actually kind of a good match. I could see why the NRA and Oklahoma probably deserve each other, but we have. Do you know what the OK2A is? it's the Second Amendment advocacy group,
Oh, okay.
and it's ran by a man named Don Spencer. And you can actually sign up for news alerts and watch their YouTube videos. You'll learn a lot about gun right activism in Oklahoma. But Don doesn't, he's not constantly raising money. I mean, he's really focused on getting laws passed, and he's very effective at it. I mean,
Yeah.
probably he probably gets 5 bills a year passed with a whole lot less money raising.
Hmm.
So you get more bang for your buck when you have Don Spencer and 2A Oklahoma in charge of your gun advocacy than the NRA that'll end up stealing a bunch of money
Yeah.
and filing bankruptcy. So I think that might be my angle of why I vote no against the NRA is like,
Yeah, because the NRA is more like the NRA is not really about gun rights. It's more of like the not like the quote unquote nonprofit arm of the gun manufacturing industry. It's not
yeah,
so much about gun rights because that's why I've said to people, I'm like, I'm okay with guns. I'm just not okay with the NRA because the NRA, they're more of advertising and getting people mad about guns, and it's not really about advocacy of gun rights. Like I never saw it
yeah,
that way.
yeah, and you're right. I mean, they're more like they're trying to make a buck.
Yeah.
They're not trying to change laws, and they are trying to. They probably are about like a gun culture. They're trying to probably promote a gun culture as far as a consumer product,
Not
like you
a
would a
not a
car
good
culture.
gun culture though, because they use like racism and sexism in order to like promote guns essentially. It's like that's my
Yes, Don
main
doesn't do
thing.
that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's my
Don
main
doesn't
thing
do that.
about the NRA. It's just like you can't be like you can be black and pro gun. Like I know those people, but you can't be black and pro NRA because the NRA isn't for you. The NRA, whenever it comes to black people and gun issues, like what was the person's name? There's a person in one state that had a gun permit and the cops killed them, and the NRA was silent on that. Like
Oh, I
it's
would like to know. Hey, I want after this, I want you to text me that case because that would be a good one to say. Is that they kind of pick and choose
yeah,
who they advocate for, whereas I'm really thinking that the two OK2A people are purist. I mean,
yeah,
they are like no limit. It's as much constitutional unfettered right to a gun, and they're always pushing the envelope for the Constitution to be read in the most liberal permissive way. And to me, they just seem like a more effective gun rights, and they're homegrown, and we're used to
yeah,
dealing with him. And when I see Don Spencer walking down the hall, I know who I'm talking to, and I know who to ask a question about. And um, I think it just would work a lot better. Plus, if we let the NRA into Oklahoma, they tap into their fundraising
yeah,
base. And personally, I feel like the NRA needs to move over and let OK2A and the Second Amendment people take over.
yeah,
I mean, it'd be easier to deal with than to have, two big different organizations out there. And if they're, especially if they're freaking stealing money, like that,
yeah,
that's aggravating in politics when people trust a political organization to do a certain thing with money and then they use it for whatever. And that's got to stop.
yeah,
That's bad. I don't care what your issue is. You can't be embezzling money from people who trust you with their $40 or it makes people feel cheated and disenfranchised, and it makes them bitter, it makes them resentful, it makes them reactionary.
yeah,
And you want our constitutional issues around Second Amendment or any of our Bill of Rights, you want those to be hammered out through a legislative process. And what Don Spencer's doing is he's using a legitimate way to advocate for guns through our legal system. And it's not from buying voters or shuffling money around or
Yeah.
any of those things. So,
He's doing it in an honest and good faith way. That's what it is. Yeah.
well, I guess some people would say, I don't know. A
Yeah.
lot of people really have a hard time trusting any good intention of anybody that treats guns like idols,
Yeah.
little idols. Um, but it is in our constitution, and there are ways to advocate for it. And any constitutional right is going to have advocates that are purist, and they feel like it's an absolute right, and they don't want anything
Yeah.
encroaching on it in any way. Free speech, free press, free assembly, um, Second Amendment rights, right to an attorney, all of our rights. That you'll always have groups that are very extremist on what you
Hmm.
can push it. But we use our legal system to figure out where the boundaries are.
Yeah. All right. So what bills are you proposing this session?
Well, I have a lot. One that I have on agenda in finance relates to TIFs. And do you know anything about TIFs?
I've heard of them, but I don't know
Yeah,
specifically about them.
it's a it's a way that you can attract business into. It's ideally it's supposed to be like urban renewal strategy. So you would attract a business over into a part of town or area to set up shop,
Hmm.
and then um, they get some tax incentives so that to offset the risk that they're putting into that area. Is my family too loud? Can you
No,
hear
you're
them
good.
pooping
I
in?
can hear them, but I
Okay.
can still hear you.
Okay. Well, I'll
Yeah.
try to talk a little louder. Yeah, they're laughing. I don't know what they're playing. They're probably playing chess or something. Um, and so anyway, but what happens is that you're basically taking this tax revenue and you're taking it out of the school funding formula.
Oh.
I know. And it ends up just kind of swirling around and helping that tax district and not necessarily helping the full state funding formula. And some of these deals are multiple years, and then some of them are done in a way where you're like, now how is this helping a blighted area? And I don't see the urban renewal part of it. and and there's not really a lot of good. The main thing is that there's not good data or financial impact that the State Department of Education or the Department of Commerce is analyzing. And so my bill basically says each year a report has to be made to clarify where these tax dollars are going and what impact it has on the um, school funding formula. So it's requiring a report
Hmm.
and disclosure of data. And then economists then can make informed decisions about how effective the TIF was. Was it
Hmm.
effective or wasn't? There's a lot of assumptions that are made about TIFs, and a lot of them are made by the people that are developing and not made by, and it's not looking at the holistic thing of the whole state either.
Hmm.
So we just need to have a better way of monitoring those. So I have a bill to reduce discrimination against women in college that get pregnant,
Hmm.
so that if they get pregnant in college, they can like hit the pause button and they can not lose their scholarship. So if they're an Oklahoma Promise Scholar or a National Merit Scholar or a Regent Scholar, and they say, wow, this is really unexpected. I need to get my head together. I need to figure out what I'm going to do. See y'all next semester, or see you in a year. Just that they can hit a pause button and and come back to it and not get a bunch of F's
Yeah.
or bad grades. Because that costs a lot to have to make that up.
Mm-hmm.
And it allows them, it makes the universities have a policy in place that's clear and understood for all students, so that a student in the community knows, oh, this is what you do if you have an unexpected pregnancy, or even it could be a planned pregnancy. If you get pregnant, go talk to this person. They'll tell you what your options are so
Mm-hmm.
that you can get your financial aid and you can keep progressing through college. And it applies to in a private school that takes Oklahoma Promise money. So if they have students going to a private school that take Oklahoma Promise money, they can't kick those young ladies out of college if they get pregnant. Title IX says you can't discriminate already, but a lot of private colleges have waivers.
Yeah.
So Title IX doesn't apply to them. So they can discriminate, kick women out, or make them withdraw, or I don't know what else there are probably they can do some other things, probably make them go online. I don't know, but I just want a conversation to happen, and I want a policy to be in place so that women who get pregnant in college don't risk their financial aid or their credits. So that's a big one. Senator Day, Republican co-author. That's
Say
good.
that again. Say that again. You broke up.
Senator Kim David,
Mm-hmm.
she's a Republican floor leader, and she saw it and she co-authored it.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So it's kind of a way that a Democrat can honor the life of the unborn without violating the privacy of women and without violating their agency or their dignity.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a lot of things that Democrats can do that can respect the woman and respect the unborn. And I think finding ways to reduce the crisis in women's life and open up pathways of problem solving and support is what Democrats can do. Same thing with expanding Medicaid and making sure that kids have health care and making sure that young women have access to good health care, because when you have access to good health care, you have access to birth control. And a lot of people don't realize, but women can't get birth control unless they have a doctor's appointment or a nurse practitioner. They have to go to the doctor to get birth control. It's not over the counter. And so it's a healthcare thing. Just even women that want to have birth control, they have to have access to healthcare. And so another bill I have is to make our health department stay open during lunch, because some health departments close during lunch from like 11 to 1, and they open at 9 and they close at 4. So how are you going to go by the health department and get birth control during your lunch hour or before
Yeah.
work or after work if their hours are so pared down, and some people have to travel? Like some of our counties, example, if you're in Lexington, Oklahoma, and you want to get birth control from the county health department, you have to go to Norman. That's a 25-minute drive in. Fortunately, Norman's hours are very consistent, but in some counties, we called down to Tillman County where I grew up and we said, what time are y'all open for birth control visits? And they had their lunch hour was really long, and they opened at 9 and they closed at 4. And I'm like, well, how do
Hmm.
you go from Davidson, Oklahoma to Frederick and during your school or whatever else you got going on? And
Yeah.
it's just it's on the week too. It's during weekdays. They're not open on Saturdays or Sundays. So that's another bill I have too, is to make sure those hours are open during lunch and before and after, like where people could work around their work schedule.
Cool.
And I have other bills, but they're I have some energy bills, but Senator Allen's not going to hear him. He's the chair of the Energy Committee, and apparently he has some coal mines that he owns, and he's not really interested in solar because it adds to the grid and it makes the price of electricity cheaper, which makes it harder for his coal plant to operate. So that was a big nope. And then I think I have some more bills out there. I need to kind of go through them all and see if they're going to get, try to see which ones are going to get hearings. And it's hard to get bills passed. I think playing good defense is something that I try really hard to do. I try to ask really, really good questions. I try to come like I'm at law school every day. And every time I show up at the Capitol, I'm like, this is law school. I have some questions. I got to understand your bill. You need to be able to explain it. I don't care if somebody airdropped it down into your iPhone, and you don't know nothing about it.
Yeah.
You're a senator and you filed it, so you need to be able to answer questions about it and explain it to people. So I focus a lot on that, is preparing good questions. And there was a bill. What other questions do you have?
I was gonna that's pretty much it. So bills. What bills you got?
We had another bill. There was there was a bill that I debated against, and it was to permit cities to paint a blue line to recognize and support law enforcement. And I asked the author if he would amend it so that the blue line could be for law enforcement, first responders, or medical care, health providers. And he said no, that he only wanted it for law enforcement. Because they have really been through a lot and they've been attacked, and he wants to just make sure that that this is for law enforcement. And so in my questioning, I asked, isn't our public safety, isn't it a team effort that it includes law enforcement, fire department, EMT, healthcare workers? And he kind of like, yeah, sort of, but law enforcement is, that's a lot about public safety, and those groups are valuable, but this bill is to recognize the law enforcement piece. And so then I asked him in front of everybody on the Senate, will you amend your bill to allow law enforcement, healthcare providers, and first responders, EMT, firefighters, to be included in this recognition? And he said no. And so I sat down, put the mic down, and then Senator Matthews, who was a retired firefighter, asked some questions, and he brought up the George Floyd and these other things that are going on. He goes, does this have anything to do with it? And he said, no, it doesn't. And so then when it was time for debate, I told a story about how in Norman, well, first of all, I said Norman has one of the very best police departments in the state. I mean, they're not perfect, but their training is professional, and they do the CIT training, which is the to de-escalate difficult situations, and they do regularly. Sometimes, and it came out of a bad situation where they didn't de-escalate it, and a man was killed at the hospital. And it was all over the news when it caused the city to change how they do their training, and they've implemented CIT, which that's one of the interventions that a lot of communities have implemented or asked for the police departments to implement. Well, I told a story that when my dad had a mental health need in Norman, I felt confident to call the police to help him come get in my car so I could take him to the hospital and get him the care that he needed, because I knew that the Norman Police Department had that training and they knew how to de-escalate stuff, and my dad would be safer with them than if I, and it would be less expensive than if I called the ambulance. And
Yeah.
no telling what they would have done to try to get him in an ambulance, because they would probably had to medicate him in some way. Um, so they did. They showed up. They de-escalated. Mr. Brown, would you come with me? You know, how's it going? That whole thing. And he got him down the elevator and in my car. And I took him straight to the ER. And when I got there, then the health team kicked in. And my dad went like face down on the ground. I mean, he just like planted on the ground, face down. He's an old man too. It's weird. But his medicines were so far off. He was just acting, you know, that's the way you act. You just act weird when you don't have your medicines right. And I looked at the lady, you know how they always have a lady at the keyboard and she's like checking people in and what's your
Yeah.
birthday and all that. And I just looked at her and I said, he's needing mental health care. And she goes, oh, da, 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 da. And she just kind of, that's what I'm dealing with now. I'm dealing with a mental health patient. I'm not dealing with the man laying in the floor just to be belligerent and awful. So she got him taken care of, got the band on him, got him behind the door. And then my dad was there. And at some point, he comes out of the room and he's trying to get away. And two security guards are standing there. And he kind of bonks into them, like kind of flops in them. And they just kind of stand there and go, Mr. Brown, you need to go back to your room. And didn't like, they were all trained to de-escalate. Like they all knew how to deal with this.
Yeah.
And they worked as a team. And then when he had to go to the hospital, it was the EMT person that carried him all the way to the hospital. And then I wrapped it up in my debate and I just said, it was a whole team on
Yeah.
that day that cared for my dad. It wasn't just police. It wasn't just the EMT. It wasn't just the security guards. It was everybody. And if we're going in, and when you recognize one team member, if you only recognize your special teams and you don't recognize the offensive line or the quarterback, then it can cause problems within the team.
Yeah.
And so that's why I'm voting no. And that's why I voted no on the blue line thing.
All right. Well, this has been great talking with you. Um, Thank you so much for coming on. I hope I can have you on some more to talk about stuff that's going on at the
Please,
Capitol.
please do. I would love to talk more. And I just want you to know I really admire your work. I admire your dedication. I admire your persistence. I think you
Thank
get
you.
you have really good questions. Um, I think it's amazing that you care the way you care and that you're using your talents to help make this understandable to people.
Hmm.
So I really count on you to keep doing that. And it really is encouraging. And that's one of the reasons why I'm not so discouraged about the impeachment stuff is that I'm like, we have a big team. We are fielding a good team throughout the United States. And we are showing people that people from all different walks of life and backgrounds and perspectives can have civil conversations and not freak out because somebody does something or thinks a way that freaks me out inside maybe, but I can sit in a conversation with that person. And fortunately, you are a very compassionate and you work hard and you've prepared well and it's easy to talk to you and you know I just really admire you a lot. So I think we just need a lot more of people dedicated like you. So keep up the good work and very encouraging to talk to you anytime I can.
All right. Well, thank you for the kind words. It means a lot.
You're welcome. Well, thank you for your hard work. It means a lot. And if you want to talk to any other legislators, tell me and I'll tell them
Okay.
to come talk if you find a bill or something you want them to talk about.